Hey, this is Jimmy, just checking in right before the episode starts. If you haven't seen Ambulance 2022, the movie we're talking about, and you don't want any spoilers, we unfortunately spoil quite a bit in our discussion of it for this episode. So if you want to see it first, then maybe don't listen to this episode yet. Otherwise, keep listening. And last but not least, Aaron has a little bit of a audio issue in this one. Can't really nail it down, so he's a little squeaky, a little peaky, but just bear with us for this episode. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Too Much Popcorn, the movie review podcast where Jamie and I watch a movie and then sit down and we talk about what we think about it, the things we liked, the things we didn't like, the things we didn't like, and more things that we didn't like. This week we watched...
And some things we liked.
This week we watched the hit 2022 film, Ambulance.
Ants.
Don't forget, the LA in there is very, very essential because I'm pretty sure LA is the main character of this movie, a la Seattle to Sex and the City. Or New York.
Yeah, you never see them on screen, but they're in there.
Yeah. They're in good old La La Land. Jake Gyllenhaal's running around, Ryan Gosling's somewhere else. He's dancing up a storm.
Russell Crowe's in there. But yes, thank you, Michael Bay. Thank you so much for gracing us with this film, Ambulance 2022. Wow. What a film, huh?
What can be said about this film?
Okay. And
folks, I know what you're thinking is that when we start with okay, it's gonna be bad, but hear us out here because this is a Michael Bay, and you know it's Michael Bay.
I think it's important to preface that the last Michael Bay film that I've seen possibly has been the first Transformers or Island. Probably Island came out before that, right?
Yeah,
I don't know, or The Island, or Island. I don't know what it's called. Either way, so I have a large amount of the Michael Bay universe that I have not caught up on, and I don't know, Bad Boys 2. I feel like those came out before Transformers, right?
Yes, those were all pre-Transformers.
In my mind.
And
but I have seen Bad Boys 2 recently.
Yeah. And I think one of the most recent ones I saw was Pain and Gain, which was entertaining. We'll maybe watch that one for the podcast.
Yeah, I just didn't really know what to expect because there is something to early 2010s, 2007 Transformers. Michael Bay films were the big explosion, the Michael Bay shots, the Michael Bay filter of the haze of LA fixed into your eyeballs. So I went in, and Aaron, you were commenting when we were watching the film as just sort of like, oh, there's a Michael Bay thing, a Michael Bayism, or there were memes online of like, the Michael Bay film, and it's just like explosions, and it's incoherent, and all this sort of stuff. And I thought maybe, hey, I really liked Islands, or The Island, whatever, the Ewan McGregor joint. Where they're running around, and it's got all the Michael Bay-isms in it, but I felt like growing up, I watched that film when it came out, and I said, oh, this is pretty cool. It's like sci-fi. It's got a lot of action. It's sort of flat in some way or the other, but ultimately it's a film that I enjoyed watching. So I go into most Michael Bay films thinking, okay, I liked The Island. Let's see what he's got for us here. And he provides us with this drone-heavy monster of a film. Just 2 hours of nonsensical, almost the chase scene that never ends. And you're like, fine, they do that in a bunch of stuff now. The film's called Ambulance. You're going to put him in the ambulance. But I'm left after this film thinking, why?
I also approached this movie with an open mind, and I do that with all Michael Bay movies because, call them what they are. They're fun. Generally, they're fun. I watched the first Transformers movie when I was a kid, and I was like, oh my God, I love this.
Seriously. I love big robots.
Yeah. And I would say most of the Michael Bay movies I watched, they're not Shakespeare. They're not out here doing revolutionary stuff. I'm sorry, Michael, they're just not. But he puts a lot of money into them and possibly a lot of time and care because he always produces something that's entertaining. And I mean, you could say the same thing for Steven Spielberg, where that guy's got his feel to his movies that each one is almost like exactly the same, and you always see the same things. You always see the face shots. You always see the, what's that person looking at? And a lot of things are the same. And so when people criticize Michael Bay for reusing his same themes, the sunglasses putting on, the sunglasses coming off, that filter, like all of those, that's just his vibe. That's what he does.
It's his style.
Yeah. And so, I approached this movie with an open mind, and I said, what are we going to get? And then, we got this movie where, again, I also was just like, why did that have to get made? And it reminds me, there was a movie I want to say that was like somewhere in the 2015 area where there is a heist that gets done, and the heist ends up, I think they're heisting a bank truck, and they end up in the bank truck and they get surrounded by cops, and it's like a standoff movie. And so I'm
Is
like,
it The Town?
No, it's different, and I can't remember if.
Yeah, I have it had a vibe of that though, where you're like, they're in the truck.
Yeah.
What else could go wrong?
And it's the bottle episode conundrum where you're like, okay, they're in this confined space. How are they going to play in this space for 2 hours, folks? Shrek didn't just go to the castle and then get stuck in a room for 2 hours.
But what if he did? What a
if he
bottle
did?
episode that would be.
So how do you bottle episode for a whole 2 hours? And yes, your bottle is rolling all over LA, but that can only be so interesting. And, this movie, there's a heist that happens at the beginning. You called it very well. You were like, what if this is Michael Bay's Grand Theft Auto movie? And no joke, there is
I was kind of joking.
Oh, but the character in the movie wasn't joking when he goes, it's like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
They called
it. Oh, there it is.
They called your bluff. And so, the heist then, through a series of misfortunate events, the whole squad gets wiped out. And it's just Jake Gyllenhaal and his friend, and they get stuck in an ambulance with a cop and a lady EMT. And then, it's just 2 hours of wondering, why is this happening?
So I checked out a little bit of the credits, sort of the crew going on, just as like the two top that I'm seeing. It's Michael Bay director. You're like, yes, yes. There's no way he didn't direct this. You know it immediately. Produced by Michael Bay. This is a movie that Michael Bay wanted to have made. So much so that he is producer credit, he'll take the bullet for this one. It's his Michael Bay bucks. But there's just, and I would love for somebody to tell me who this movie is for, because it's not for me. And I'm watching it and I'm saying, okay, so we're introduced to this down on his luck, Yaya's character, Will. You learn Michael Bay style. He is very good at establishing facts about a character. And I will leave it at that, because you're given a list of things. You're like, okay, ex-Marine, wife, cancer, experimental, blah, 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 blah. You have a bullet list of stuff that you now know about this person. You're introduced to the EMTs, blah, 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 blah. Not really a lot of information except good at their job, I think her name's Isa Gonzalez is plays Cam. Her character traits are as follows, blah 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 blah. You get her little rundown. Then we go and we meet Jake Jilly Willy, and he is crazy car guy who loves his brother and also is just sort of like really into Nespresso or something. And so
oh no, they had the Keurig for that one. They got the funding.
The boss splurged on this one, okay? I already felt like something was off right when this film started because I'm like, okay, so Michael Bay is doing we have to do a heist because my wife needs surgery film, but not establishing who the main character is because fully I was like, well, it's called Ambulance, so the EMTs are the main characters. We see them in a very intense situation right in the beginning, and they deal with it, and they get to the thing, and then they're ice cold, enchilada eating, not worrying about stuff in the future type of people. And you're like, ooh, wow, those are some cool people. I wish I could learn more about them. Maybe, I don't know, are they the main characters yet? I did learn about this Marine guy who has a wife with the thing and a reason to do the heist. So I'm just left with all these like who is he said she said sort of situation, and then Michael Bay just decides, nah, fuck it, we put him in the ambulance and we just fucking let him go. And it didn't work.
So hear me out. And as always, folks, we do zero prep for this show. The only prep we ever do is just watching the movie. So
is that not prep? That's prep.
That's prep. But beyond that, what I'm wondering is how much did this movie gross? Did it make a profit? Because I think
we can never look it up.
We can't. It's lost to the void. I don't know where that information is, and I would not know the first place to go looking for it. Maybe
does the
library.
Profit matter?
So here's what I'm thinking about profit, right? Is I think Michael Bay, and this is going to sound like a criticism to him, but it's not. It's honestly like good for him because I think he knows that he can make a movie. And for the most part,
he certainly does.
He can make a movie that returns a profit.
5 Transformers.
And so he's not out here making these Shakespeare films, these, movies like Nolan does, Tenet, Inception, the ones that like revolutionize movies and change things. Avatar, boom, that changed things.
There you go.
He's not rolling at the high stakes tables where he's putting millions of dollars into these movies that might or might not make a return. He's like, hey, look, I'm going to play the lower tables. $500,000. I'm going to put $500,000 down on the table and boom. Oh, hey, I got back $1 million. I've now made twice my profit on that. So I think he
But
knows,
you are dealing with Michael Bay bucks. Remember, this
True.
is like a $26 million movie.
But to him, that's the
that
low
they
stakes
have
table.
to make. Exactly, yes. You're $500,000. I'm just saying this movie probably cost upwards of what, like $190 million. Like they blew up so many things in this movie.
Again,
there's just literally no way.
Information I wish we could pull out of somewhere, but we
exactly,
just
yeah, and we can't.
Can't.
It just doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
There's just nowhere to find it.
So, to support this, I wish I knew those numbers, but I'm gonna stand by. I think you look at all of his movies and look at the Transformers Pentaverate, like. The fact that he made 5...
No one speaks of the Pentaverate.
5 movies that, like, they're not cultural touchstones. They're fun, and they made him a profit, so why shouldn't he keep making movies that get him a profit? I go to work to make a profit, right?
Right.
Why shouldn't he also go to work to make a profit? So, again, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying this is what might be going through his head. And, Michael, reach out to us. Come on the podcast. Tell us if we're right or wrong.
That's the thing. I am totally on Michael Bay's side in terms of doing what you love. And I know for a fact, I've seen some interviews, some behind the scenes stuff. Michael Bay loves making movies. He loves lining up those shots, doing those things that he just is known for. And he wouldn't be making these movies if people didn't pay him to do it. It's just full on, like, I mean, he would. That's the thing. He totally would. But because he is consistently in his element, people will go see a Michael Bay film because they know in some way what they're going to be getting is a Michael Bay film. You know, like if you go and again, you're saying Spielberg, you're saying Spike Lee, or all these people who are visionary in their own way. I think Michael Bay is visionary in his own way, but it is a weird, warped sense of a vision that he has in terms of I don't really want to make a point of anything. I want to pretend that I'm making a point. And Michael, I'm not trying to slander you here. This movie made no fucking sense to me.
You know, I think one of the reasons I have a soft spot for Michael Bay and his movies is because I see a lot of myself in him, and even you, where like we got into, you know, this podcast because we love movies, and we love movies so much that at one point we both wanted to make like big movies.
Facts.
And like, you know, that was our goal, was to like make movies. And if I had gotten to a point where I was directing movies and had the budget of, you know, Michael Bay, and somebody said, Aaron, we can get you cars that you can just blow up, I'd be like, yeah, we're blowing up a car in this movie. We're blowing up a car in this movie. I know this one's not actually a Transformers movie, but they're actually all Transformers. So, you know, I've always been on his side, where it's like, if I had the money and the profit, and
if he can, dude, why not?
Yeah, if that was my day job where I could just do these things and wouldn't even have to justify myself except to maybe a few execs, like I would be making possibly the same exact movies as him.
That's the thing, is it's hard to say that this is like a shitty movie, or like Michael Bay is this like washed director or something like that. Like I don't understand that critique of him. I think, like I was saying, it's like he is a visionary in terms of revolutionizing how people sort of wanted to even make action movies as soon as he started, and put his stamp on any of his earlier films. I think Fast and the Furious took notes and was like, we got to do Michael Bay stuff. And people love the Fast and Furious series, and I think there's a lot of directors. Like I don't know how many directors they brought in for how. I mean, they're making like 10 now. Is it like Fast X, right? So it's like they haven't gotten Michael Bay for it, but Michael Bay essentially is making a Fast and Furious video game, Grand Theft Auto, Army of Two. He just is like a big, like lovable. To me, is like a lovable. He feels like a friend, right? It's like he watched and played all the games, and not in like a weird parasocial, like I don't fucking know the guy. I'm just saying his movies, I see things that I'm like, oh, I would love to have that be done in front of me. I'm just sitting behind the camera.
Yeah.
And see that happen. It would blow my mind when we were trying to make movies. It would blow my mind now. And there's some shots in Ambulance that do effectively blow my mind. I think there was some whip down the freeway and they're like blowing up a cop car, and they go through like the axle, or, you know, like they go through some gear, and I'm like, this is Michael, you know, like I can't help but feel like a fraternity to just how buck wild he wants to make a movie.
Dude, I absolutely love the fact that it is 2022 and we have the technology to digitally blow up cars. But Michael Bay is like, you know what? I'm going to slingshot cars down the highway. I'm going to blow cars up and, you know, blow them up off of a bridge. I love that. I love that. And I've said this before. I don't think I've said it on the podcast yet, but I've said that there is a lost art to blowing up actual cars. Ooh. Look, FBI, before you cancel me.
Wait. In a film, for a film. This is a stock car.
Yeah.
We purchased it for the film. Yeah.
You know, you look at old 1950s movies, and like in every 1950s movie,
The Italian Job is one of the perfect, like, we bought a bunch of cars and we blew them up type of movie, and there isn't really much else to it, but you're like, they did the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, what was that one film where a cliff, car off the cliff is one of my favorite things in
absolutely.
cinema. And Michael Bay, I think, is the same way where you go, oh, we could throw a car off a building. We could throw a car off the LA River. We'll blow it up into a thing. We'll have it crash into a box of lemons. And that's fun too. Yeah, he understands and capitalizes on the art of real stunts, be them explosives, pulling people through, pulling people one way, pulling people the other way. He's an amazing action director. I cannot fault him for the things that you know he's gonna nail.
Absolutely. And someday he'll put out like a musical or something. It's gonna like, you're gonna be like, there's no way he's gonna blow up a car in this movie. And there'll be 30 cars blown up and I'll be like, yeah!
They'll just line them up and all the cars will start singing because they're Transformers and then they'll explode.
Transformers the musical. Michael, if you want to get us on that one's ours.
That one's ours? We claimed it from Hasbro or whoever. That's our movie. Musical. Transform musical.
Yeah.
We'll workshop it. We'll workshop it with Michael. He'll come over, play some Grand Theft Auto with us, and we'll workshop the title and just sort of stuff like that.
Should we take our break now so that we can come back and talk more about this movie?
Let's take a little break so that we could just mull over a little bit more about this film.
Yeah.
And we're back. Talking about
back.
Ambulance, which is the film we're talking about. I think we brought it up to the holy concept of Michael Bay. We elevated him to sainthood, and now we must drag him down through the seven hells.
Well, let me ask you the question this way, Jimmy. Can a car chase be an entire movie? Can explosions and
Certainly.
rampant mayhem be the entire? Can
Yes.
domestic terrorism be the entire movie?
Granted, it was a very small amount that built up over a very long time in the film. I would say yes, these things combine into what one could consider a film.
Yeah. Well, so let's break it down.
Yeah. So I feel like I just don't know who this was for, and so I want to sort of figure out who do you think would go and think Ambulance? I live in LA. This movie could be for me. Do you think that's probably it?
Oh,
It can't just be
I
that.
don't know, because like I'm trying to think, if I were a paramedic and I was watching this movie and I was watching the part of the the part of the movie where the police officer, he's already been shot at this point, he's in the back of the car. The paramedic girl has been spending 30 minutes on him. So he gets shot in the leg, right? She puts a tourniquet on it. Great, that's what you're supposed to do. And then for 30 minutes, he's still bleeding out from somewhere. And she spends all of it being like, I don't know where the blood is coming from.
There's so much blood.
How is he still bleeding? And she hasn't bothered to do a full body sweep. She doesn't know where the blood's coming from. And I'm like, okay, I have a feeling that if I were a paramedic, that's something I would have done. I would have been like, that's just a part of my job. And also, this man is bleeding. I should find where the blood is coming from. But she just sits there calmly and she's like, oh, yeah, there's a leak. And
okay, the funny thing was about that shot is it looked like the ground, but not necessarily the grating of an ambulance. And I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh, of course it's inside the ambulance. But the first time they show the like blood leaking down on the ground, I'm like, the ambulance is losing oil. Oh no.
Well, I could be wrong too, but I think I remember a shot in there where she put her hand in that blood and like brought it up like an urukai, sweeping the hand through blood to track it. She's like, "There's blood," which is wild.
So, yes, that shot alone, I almost was so engrossed in the film in terms of not knowing what's going on and who do I care about, where I thought she was gonna like try and put it back in him, right?
Yeah.
So he's losing it, and she's like, "Oh no, oh no, it's going everywhere." Will, can you help me with this? Will, here, open your hands, Will, put on the glove. Yeah,
Dude,
I just
with this
didn't
girl's
know.
medical procedures, I would not have been surprised if she had like gotten a funnel, stuck it in the bullet wound, taken his blood off the ground, and like
Scooped it with a bench scraper.
Yeah, because so anyway, she finds where the blood is coming from and finds out that he's got an abdominal wound, and she concludes that the bullet is probably still in there. She proceeds to get on the phone and call her ex, and she's like, "Hey, this guy's bleeding and he won't stop. What do I do?" And he's like, "Oh, you got to do surgery right now, toots." And then he puts her on Zoom with two surgeons who are like, "Obviously, the best choice is to open this man up. Put your arm right in there. Pull out his spleen and pull the bullet out of his spleen." And it's like, no, that is not what you should do.
No.
Yeah, because then she proceeds to do that.
I'd hope not.
Yeah.
I'd hope I didn't have anybody do that.
She proceeds to do that, rupture this poor man's spleen, patch it up with her hair clip, which all of these are just a wild series of events. So much so that, like, my suspension of disbelief was gone at that point. In the same way that doctors take their Hippocratic oath with the "I will do no harm" to a patient, EMTs, I believe, also take the same Hippocratic oath, or something so similar to it, that if you told a reasonable person that they should cut somebody open, take the spleen out, and then patch it up with a hair clip and put it back in a person, they'd be like, "That is wild. I absolutely will not."
It's the addendum to the Hippocratic Oath for EMTs. The Hippocratic Light, they call it.
Yeah. It's the
Where it says, "Do no harm unless you're a hostage and you have a hair clip and you want to put it in a guy. You just want to do it."
Yeah. So, long story short on that, my little 10-minute rant there, I would like to conclude with saying, I don't think this is for EMTs. I don't think this movie was made for EMTs.
Okay, so we're crossing EMTs off the list because although, yes, I am not an EMT, I did take a lifeguarding course, and this is important for the backstory in terms of it pissed me off how like scary they were. Just like, this man is dead. Like, he's bleeding so much. If I encountered this and they were on the road for 2 hours or whatever extended amount of time they were doing this man is a dead man.
Yeah.
They did so much stuff to this guy, and he had 2 bullets in him. Or I guess 1 bullet in him and 1 went through. I don't know. That would piss me off. I think if I was an EMT and I see all these like terrible things happening to this guy, I'd just be like, "Oh, this sucks. This doesn't make me feel good." Unless I like roasting it in terms of like, I'm a good EMT and this is how I would do it. So I watch ambulance to feel better about my real job.
Yeah.
Maybe. Let's cross EMTs off for now. We crossed them off. It's not for cops, because cops are the stupidest entity.
Oh my Lord, they are.
They're like, there's so many instances where I feel like they could do a box maneuver to just like stop the ambulance or something. But because it's a hostage situation and there's like not only the LAPD, there's the SIS, which is, I guess, like bank rob stoppers. There's FBI's involved and like all these different agencies that are all stepping on each other's toes. And I get that like there would be some communication error at some point, but they literally, because the dog was in the car, the cops are like, "Oh, we're gonna move the barricade that we have to like stop them."
Yeah.
What are they gonna do?
Folks, there is literally a part where the ambulance is at the end of this dead-end street. The cops come barreling down. Like, the ambulance has 100% 0 miles an hour stopped. Jake Gyllenhaal makes, like, some stupid quip about, like,
he should be closer to the sign.
Yeah. And the cops are barreling down the road at 90 miles an hour, proceeding to not stop at all, and they go flying off this cliff past the ambulance, when all they could have done was just stop, box him in, and been like, we got him, folks.
Oh, we got him. We could do the hostage situation here instead of on the road.
And there's so many times where there are countless cop cars, driving head to head with this ambulance. And all you have to do, I know, just take one for the team. It's going to suck, but drive your car into the ambulance. Boom. It's going to stop it. People are going to get hurt. Yes. But it's going to cause so much less damage in the long run. I don't know.
There is just an amount of cop car mayhem that escalates it to again, I hate to bring it back to money, but for some reason it's like I see one cop car go down and I'm like, that's so much of the budget of LA that they're already spending on this, that now they have to like recoup. And then they're gonna, the budgetary meeting's gonna come up in 2 months and they're gonna say, well, we lost 1,800 cop cars during the LA ambulance race, remember that? And then the mayor's gonna be like, oh, well, we gotta give the police $30 million, I guess. So whatever. I mean, write the big check.
Okay, hear me out. So they had an excess of money that they needed to spend at the end of their fiscal year. They were like, we got to get rid of some cop cars so we can requisition new cop cars.
Oh,
they
genius,
were wrecking all these cars in a almost fraud-like manner so that they could get new cop cars. This movie is for both fiscal analysts and police captains.
I think we figured it out.
I think we got it.
I think that is the nail in the coffin of who this movie is for, because all of the cops who you see effectively not stop the crime are on a different channel going, oh, you're in car 618? That one has been needing a new radiator for 2 years. Get that one off the road. And he goes, whoa, line boxes.
The guy who drove off the cliff, he looked down at his odometer. He saw that it had just rolled over to 100,000.
Just 100,000.
He's like, I don't know, the brakes don't stop as much as they used to. I can justify.
roll. Breaks his own neck. Worth it. We get a new SUV.
The LAPD fiscal analyst is like, oh, yes. Keep that budget going up for next year, boys.
We get free cop car. If we hit 5, the next one's free, everybody. Get that cop car rolling. Are you going to run into the water things on the freeway? Those things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars somehow.
The DOT's going to order those, and they're going to love this too.
They're going to funnel it through us? Oh my God. It's a kickback after kickback, everybody. Okay, I think we figured it out.
Yeah, this movie must be for fiscal analysts, because it's not for cops. It's not for EMTs. I also wouldn't argue that it's for lovers of heist movies, because the
heist is over in 20 minutes.
I actually looked because I wanted to see at what point they got onto the ambulance, and it was like minute 34. So it was like a 30-minute heist.
Yes.
Minus the whole him talking to his family. So yeah, you're probably right. 20 minutes. And then
spent a good 4 minutes on that. He had to reintroduce himself to his brother, and then sort of get bought into the heist, which again was really fast.
Oh,
and there was actively racist people that are like, your brother and your brothers, and it's like half of the crew just was super racist to us because you're black, dude. Is this okay? And it's like, half a skinhead's better than a whole. What the fuck was that? Why, Michael? Have somebody. Oh, Michael, that hurt me on the inside, because I think Will, if he was smart at all, which he proves himself not to be throughout the film, he should have just left. He's like, well, that guy he's going to stab me in the back, and that fucking hipster guy, he's going to stab me in the back, because they were just both super racist to me, so I'm fucking out of here. And then Will gets out, and then the fucking movie doesn't have to happen.
Yeah. I also think, it's 2022. Racism, or it's 2023 at this point. Racism fucking sucks, and I'm great. I love when a director's like, hey, it's got no place in our society, and I want to take a stand against it. Michael Bay, you literally should have had that character say that. Jake Gyllenhaal should have just come up, slapped that guy, and been like, hey, it's 2022. Racism sucks. And then, it would have been like, yeah! And then they get on board, they go on their heist.
But they actively did not do it. They instead were like, oh, well,
that's just
he's
him.
A boomer. He's a boomer joke, I guess. I don't know. It's how they roll up in the skinheads. Why have them be racist? Because then when they die, I'm happy.
Yeah.
When all of them died, I said, thank you. Thank you for crushing that guy with the truck, because now he doesn't have to be in the movie anymore because he's fucking dead.
And that's my other problem with this movie is writing unlikable characters is so tough, and writing likable bad guys is so tough. Look at Red Dead 2. That whole series has lovable bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
People who have done bad things, but they have character and they're well written in a way that you're like, I like these people and I want to know more about them. And
yet they're heinous criminals.
Or even like Fast and the Furious, right? They're family and I love them. They're my family at this point. I can't wait for every Thanksgiving when I can sit down with Dom and the boys, you know.
They eat the turkey.
They eat the turkey. Yeah. So writing lovable bad guys is tough. And this movie just, it had nobody I liked. And even the good guys were awful. Everybody was awful and just so poorly written, where it was just like, I can't empathize with anybody. I want everybody to die, frankly. If the president just gets up on the phone with LAPD and they're like, yeah, we've authorized a nuke strike, we're just gonna nuke all of LAPD, I would have been like,
it's gone.
Yeah.
It's true. We did discuss during the film, we're like, okay, so they should just all die, right?
Because you even, again, you have the EMT girl who's on board with the people in the ambulance, and you're supposed to be like, I'm worried about her. You know, I want her to be safe. She's the, you know, but like 30 minutes into being taken, she's developing Stockholm syndrome where she's like, I'm helping them. And then she almost kills the cop by pulling his spleen out. She shoots Will, and then like there's so many points where it's like she is not a good person. She's not competent at her job. She's not likable. And you know, Jake Gyllenhaal. And
she kept that man alive, Aaron. You take that back.
She's a hero because she was kidnapped.
She's a hero.
Jake Gyllenhaal and Will are over there yelling at each other the whole time. And that goes to one of my other least favorite tropes in a movie, where, I'll just put it this way, tension is not built through characters screaming at each other. And if you have a whole movie that's just driven by characters screaming at each other, it gets to the point where it's fucking annoying.
I think you can add on to that in terms of them screaming at each other the whole time. In terms of not building character, cannot be salvaged by one flashback where they once played a ball game or shoot, you know, cowboys and were sheriff and outlaw and were shooting each other with fake pop caps. That one scene, Michael, that one scene can't fix their relationship on screen throughout the entire 2 preceding hours that we watched.
I also think that the metaphor was lost in that flashback. So hear me out.
It was he killed them.
He killed
30
them in the
years
past.
ago the whole time.
I think something more effective would have been the flashback where, like, you know, they're playing cops and robbers. Little Will kills little Jake Gyllenhaal, and then he like feels bad about it, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, brother, I'll never shoot you. You know, even if we get stuck in an ambulance and I have to save my life and everybody else's life, I'll never do that. I think that metaphor would have worked way better, but it was just like, nope. Little good Will shoots little bad Jake Gyllenhaal, and then he's like, I did it, and then I'm gonna do it again.
And then you flash forward to, I did it. Yeah, it really didn't. Again, that's the aspect where you go, okay, so it's not a heist movie, it's not an EMT positive movie, it's not a cop movie, and then you're like, who is this flashback for?
Yeah, who was being redeemed?
It's not for anybody looking for the pinnacle of storytelling over here. I didn't need it because it didn't work.
Yeah, because I think what that was supposed to do was like, because it was, you know, shown in tandem with the cop that was shot by, spoiler alert, Will. Where,
oh, I'm definitely putting a spoiler bumper at the front of this one. Are you kidding me?
Oh, we're probably going to spoil this one. So he's shot by Will, and then it's like shown at the very end that he's like pointing to Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and he's like, that's the one who did all the bad stuff. But it also doesn't show that he's like exonerated Will. So is Will still going to go to jail? I'm assuming he's going to go to jail. And not only
there's no way he can't go to jail for that.
Even if he doesn't go to jail, which he's going to go to jail.
He's got to go to jail.
I'm sorry. I don't care. Because again, I didn't like Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I didn't like his character. The EMT hated her. And even the cop who was in there, like, he sucked too. Because at the very beginning, he goes up to a bank and he's like, "Hey, your bank's closed. Is somebody robbing the joint?" And you're like, is this the least socially aware person I've ever seen in my life? No, but he's pretty dang close.
Incel cop.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who it was trying to redeem at the very end, because if they were trying to redeem Will, it sucked and I didn't care.
It would be amazing if the flashback, he shoots, Will shoots his brother, and it's mimicking Jake Gyllenhaal on the ground being shot by him in the future, of course. And then it pans over, still in the past, and the young cop boy was previously shot by Will, and young Will helps him up.
Yeah. He's like, I'm on your side now.
It did just...
I don't know. Okay,
that's the thing too. Okay, it can't be for like Marines and like pro-army people, right? Because it's like painting them as sort of like a...
We have no other options, and we have to resort to crime, which I'm also going to say is another one of my least favorite tropes.
There you go.
The two tropes that they gotta stop writing for veterans in movies is the I've killed people and I'm struggling with it, and for this movie, the I am down on my luck, I'm a former veteran who can't get a job. It paints them as incompetent, it paints them as unwanted by society, and they are some of the most valuable members to the society. They've served our country, and now you guys are doing a disservice to them by showing them in that position.
I think it's important to have these roles when they serve an actual purpose. But yeah, it does seem to always turn back to they have military training, therefore vis-a-vis they're fucking cold ass killers and they'll do whatever job it takes to blah blah blah. But it's like this concept is the entirety of Barry, which works fully for me. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm saying it can be handled well. It just more often than not is used as a sort of storytelling gotcha, sort of, he's a veteran, you don't have to worry about it. He knows how to shoot gun and kill people. He did it all the time and it messed him up real bad. And therefore he's doing all this other stuff. And you're like, yes, fine. Barry's a comedy at its heart. So you can use that and still be devastatingly upsetting with the results of that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in this one, Ambulance, I'm like, this isn't a comedy. This is just action, wall-to-wall chase. There's nothing funny. The funny lines that I'm supposed to laugh at, where he points at a sign and says, get a little closer, or any of these sort of Jake Gyllenhaal. Again, Jake Gyllenhaal's a witty little guy. I love him so much. And I just think they gave him all the lines that are supposed to be goofy little one-liners, and I didn't like it. It just didn't. I pointed at it and I said, Michael, I was very like... I felt like scolding Michael throughout the film. I said, Michael Bay. I dropped the last name. I said, Michael, you're in my house. He felt like he was a kid who had come in with somebody else. And I was like, Michael, is this how you treat your parents? And he does. Apparently, this is how he treats everyone.
Yeah. All right. So I know we've already found out that this movie's for fiscal analysts. But
we figured it out.
Let's also put in there, is this movie also possibly for cartel members? Because there, was the prevalent use of the cartel in this movie.
Could that be for them? I don't really understand. Is it like a pro? Is like a good idea? It's like pro cartel. I don't think so.
Cartel's use in this movie was so fucking whack, where it was just like, okay, so Jake Gyllenhaal's character knows this one cartel member who his dad kind of did some jobs for, and so now the cartel member owes something to him, and so, Jake Gyllenhaal, he's in a tough spot, so he calls up the cartel member, and he's like, I need you to get me 4 ambulances and park them under this bridge, because we're going to do a cool little gotcha on him, a la magician with a ball and a cup. And then... Oh yeah, we're gonna stop there before the domestic terrorism, because we're gonna take a second to look at that scene too. So they park a whole bunch of ambulances under a bridge.
But they paint one green.
Yeah, they do.
And the funny thing is I was like, ah, ha, 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 he's so dumb, he'll paint. You know,
The
this is me. Like,
windows.
I'm already fed up with the movie, and I'm like, ha ha ha, this guy's so dumb, he'll paint the windows. And then they do it. I'm like, oh, I didn't really want it to happen. I sort of said it as like a joke.
Yeah.
And then it happened.
And Jake Gyllenhaal wants this other character to come with his paint sprayer and blue paint to paint the ambulance in a manner that's like going to disguise it. But why did they bother to do that? Because it was still very much obvious an ambulance.
Yes.
They could have just gotten out and they could have been like, hey, Poppy, can you bring 4 ambulances and 1 car that is definitely not an ambulance that we can put a stretcher into? Oh, great. So they roll up under the bridge, they get the guy out in the stretcher, they put him in this other car, and then they send out the 4 other ambulances. The helicopter's like, there's 4 ambulances and 1 other car leaving. That possibly can't be them. I don't know. I feel like that could have worked a lot better.
I don't really think it mattered at all, because apparently they just didn't follow the green ambulance, which just... why?
I know, because again, I know I pointed it out to you, and this episode's just us pointing out all the plot holes. Ambulances have big numbers on top of them. They say...
Shown in the movie.
And there's helicopters everywhere that are watching this ambulance. And don't you think at one point the helicopter pilot would have been like, all right, this ambulance we've been chasing the whole time.
No, because he didn't say it. They didn't write it in the film, so no one said it.
I don't know. I think he would have looked at the big numbers on there and been like, all right, I don't think that's the one that we were chasing.
This is a high-tensity situation, Aaron. The helicopter pilot isn't reading a number.
So
they looked at the white and red ambulance and they said,
well, that's a green ambulance, so we're going to let that one go away.
Yeah. So at the same time that this amazing ball and cup trick is going on with the ambulances, one of the ambulances is rigged up with a whole bunch of C4, and the cops are over in this intersection for some reason, and the cartel say, hey, it is time to take a whole ambulance full of C4 and drive it into these cops. And at no
point... They were in the barrio, man.
At no point did anybody directing, making, executively producing, whatever, this movie look at this and say, that's domestic terrorism, and we probably shouldn't show that in a movie.
No, they said, this is fucking sick, dude. It's not, it's not domestic terrorism if it's the cartel in L.A.
You're right, that's just a Tuesday.
It's just straight up terrorism.
Because not only that, they then, after the cops have been blown up by the ambulance, drive a stupid little dummy car down that literally has a mannequin. We're not saying
dummy car. There's a dummy in it. It is a dumb car, but there is a dummy in it.
And a minigun a la Breaking Bad that pops up.
Oh, it was the Breaking Bad minigun.
Yeah. I mean, they use an M60 in Breaking Bad, so obviously it's different in this.
Yeah. Well, this is a cartel minigun.
Yeah, and so then the minigun just shreds through all these cops, and again, it's like, nobody was looking at this and was like, probably shouldn't show this. This is bordering on domestic terrorism again. Like, I don't know. It
builds up really fast that the cartel is bad and will be bad, essentially.
Yeah, and maybe
it's an escalation after so many escalations that it just doesn't make sense, though, right?
Yeah, and again, I think it goes to the point where, like, Will would be, interrogated later, and they'd be like, hey, so did Jake Gyllenhaal contact the cartel to come do some domestic terrorism? And he would have been like, yeah, I was a part of that. I did nothing to stop that. And they'd be like, okay, cool, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. And he'd be like, yeah, seems fair.
There's just no way that it ended well for even the EMT dropping the money in the baby carrier.
Lord. And then she just walks away from an active crime scene, and nobody's like,
stop her. One sec, actually.
Should we check what's in her bag before she leaves?
Some astute observers like, you gotta check the baby thing. Yeah, it just didn't because there felt like there was no good way out of it. And then the wife is like, "Oh, well, this is my money now," and you're like, "No, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You actively can't do that." It was like, "Well, I got the cancer surgery I need. It's experimental." And I mean, she gave me the money. It must have been her money, right? I didn't know whose money it was. Like no, it felt so stupid.
Yeah.
Aaron, help. It was so stupid.
So, Jimmy, let's ask the question. Are you going to recommend this to people? Is this a big old watch from you? Is this a not watch from you?
This is a not watch from me, Aaron.
Oh, no way.
Are you astounded by this? Because, look, Michael Bay figured out drones are really cool in this movie, and I'm happy
we didn't
for
even
him for
touch
that.
on the drones.
I'm very excited for Michael Bay and his new drone obsession. But guess what? If I see another one of those fucking whippadoo drone shots that serves nothing except making me feel like I'm on a roller coaster, sure, it looked cool, but I actively could not stop going like, "Oh, Michael, look what you're doing. Yeah." And it ultimately is fine. Again, period. Michael Bay can do what he wants. He has the money. He makes the movies. This is his deal. This is what he's gonna do. He's gonna find a drone and he's gonna throw it to the moon. I don't care. He's gonna figure it out. So I'm glad he's messing around, but it really just, again, it failed so hard to get me invested in. And I didn't even care. Again, I went into the Michael Bay movie thinking something cool is going to happen. And some cool stuff happened. Not enough to make me go, yeah, this one I'm coming back to over and over again. And I got to tell everybody to do it too. It didn't do that to me. And I'm saying do not watch it. What about you?
So, yes.
Thinker.
The conflict.
Ambulance, the thinking man's film.
It had no character I liked and writing that I abhorred more than so many movies. But yeah, no, it did have those fun drone shots. The one where I know you've seen it on Instagram, folks. The people take the drone, they flip it up, it runs perpendicular to a wall. They run straight down that wall towards the ground. You can look it up on Instagram. People do it in Scotland all the time at, the cliffs of Dover. And Michael Bay saw that on Instagram and he said, "Hey, I'm going to put 8 1/2 of these into this movie." And then let's not even talk about the rest of the drone shots that I did in this movie, because, oof. But yeah, he did some wild things. And I don't know if it was him just experimenting with things that he was always like, I've wanted to put these in other movies, but I don't know if they're going to look good. I don't know if this is going to look good on the big screen and give people, is going to break their immersion. Because he's doing wild things where people are walking at him and he's sitting at a drone 90 miles an hour at them. You're just like, slow down!
Oh my God, you're going to decapitate Jake Gyllenhaal.
And I like in other movies where he's got two people talking and the it's doing the Michael Bay rotate around them while they're talking. I've always loved that. And he does that in this one. But he's got all these other ones and you're just like, well, this is possibly too much, Michael. Possibly too much. So I would say with everything I've said, it's going to be obvious that this movie is a not watch from me. Folks, if you have time...
I thought you were going to flip on me the last second.
No, we do not have a crisis mode here, folks. We have a consensus. Consensus
Double not
mode.
watch. Consensus achieved.
Yeah, if you've got 2 hours and 10 minutes, go watch Shrek. I don't want you waste. I specifically said we weren't even going to do an episode on this one. We really weren't. We were just looking to sit down and watch a movie and have like a fun Sunday afternoon. And I told Jimmy, I was like, yo, we got to do an episode on this one because I need to warn people to not watch this movie.
If we reached you tonight, please
don't watch this movie. Michael, if you made this movie, I don't care. You made money off of it. That's great. If you needed to recover after 2020, everybody did. If you just needed to shake the rust off, great. But folks, don't watch this movie.
So I think there might be something to me not seeing into the Transformers, though. And I'm now wondering if he got super into drones, like maybe halfway through. You know, he's like strapping. He's like, what type of camera can I slap on these drones nowadays? And when he figures out you can throw like an IMAX or something crazy on there, he's like, oh, we're doing that.
Yeah. There is more and more. Like we've seen it, like we saw it in the new season of The Mandalorian where they did that cool helmet cam, right? Like it's obvious that directors are starting to try all these new camera types with drones or with like little GoPros, and that's great. But folks, directors, I'm gonna warn you, sometimes you're gonna do it and it's gonna work. Other times you're gonna do it and you're gonna do that one shot 8.5 times, and Aaron's gonna say, I'm gonna count these because this is bad to watch.
Yes, I think it goes back to the purpose it serves is Michael Bay saying, this is a cool shot, I'm going to do it. And I go, it is a cool shot. Thank you for showing us the power of what you can do here. But when I think about it in terms of a shot that is so egregiously this one thing that you have to sort, you don't have to count it, but when you do count it, you go, yeah, there it is. I don't know why it's there, but there it is. And I think that's the culmination of this movie to me, is like, I don't know why it's here, but there it is. Ambulance 2022.
Yeah. Folks, even if you were a fiscal analyst, do not watch this movie.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Too Much Popcorn. Thank you so much for listening. If you take our advice to heart and you never see Ambulance, then use that 2 hours of time to do something great. Yeah. Watch a good movie.
Take 20 seconds out of that to write us a comment. Say, hey, I've never seen Ambulance and I loved it. I love the fact that I've never seen it. I've saved so much time. And, you know, put that down there just so we know that we're possibly making the world a little bit better.
Yes. Or flip side, I watched Ambulance and I listened to your episode on it, and I wish I had listened to this episode sooner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or even, I'm a fiscal analyst and I watched this movie, and watching those cop cars go off and thinking about the requisition order I'd get to fill out the next day. Wow, that really got my goat going.
I disagree with every opinion in this episode.
Put that down there. I will read it, and I will talk about it in the next episode, and I'll give you a little shout out.
Yeah, your YouTube commenter name is LAPD Analyst 69. So thank you, LAPD Analyst 69, for in the future writing that comment for us. And thank you to anyone else who listened. Again, Too Much Popcorn. We put it all in an ambulance and we drove it across the city. Also, the empty streets of LA, which is just an interesting sort of thing.
The egregious comment that rush hour is about to start and it never started.
Rush hour's 45 minutes out. And it's like, if you have a time on when rush hour starts, you're not in LA. B, yeah, it's just...
Oh, wait. We misunderstood it. They were going to go see Rush Hour.
Oh.
They were like, we got to get
Chinese
this ambulance
theater
thing. Yeah, we got to get this thing taken care of. We got to go see Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker.
The American Touchstone. Oh, you know, Aaron, I think you nailed it. This movie is for Rush Hour fans. Fiscal analysts. But thank you so much for listening. We'll do another one of these the next time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.